We continue now at the top of Daf Lamed Aleph Amud Aleph and Meseches Gittin. This is Gittin Daf 31a. The Gemara continues with a brisa that brings the opinion of Abba Elazar ben Gamla. The pasuk says, "V'nechshav lachem trumaschem." We understand the pasuk to mean b'shtei trumos hakasim medaber. The pasuk is talking about two different kinds of truma: achas truma gedola v'achas trumas meiser. It's referring to truma gedola and trumas meiser, and the two are compared to one another. Keshem truma gedola nitelos ba'omer uv'machshava. Just like truma gedola, you can separate it by estimating, and also you can do it by machshava. You don't need to actually physically separate it. You can just look at it and say this is going to be the truma. Kach trumas meiser nitelos ba'omer uv'machshava. So to trumas meiser, you can separate it by estimation, and you can do it by thought. Uchashem sheyesh lo reshus labalabayis litrum truma gedola. And just like the balabayis has permission to separate truma gedola, that of course the owner of the crops separates truma gedola. So the chiddush over here is Abba Elazar ben Gamla says kach yesh lo reshus labalabayis litrum trumas meiser. So too the balabayis has permission to take off trumas meiser, even though generally that's the obligation of the Levi who receives the meiser. He takes off trumas meiser, but we learn from the pasuk that the balabayis has permission to separate trumas meiser. Rashi says, "B'shtei trumos the haikra b'leviim ksiv." This pasuk v'nechshav lechem trumaschem is written by the Leviim. Trumaschem hainu trumas meiser. Trumaschem therefore is the truma the Leviim give, the trumas meiser. Kedagon min hagoren, and compares it to dagon min hagoren hainu truma gedola. That refers to truma gedola. Reishis dagon she Yisrael mafresh. That's what the Yisrael separates. Migorno from the goren. Ve'ikesh hakos of trumas meiser the truma gedola. There's a comparison here of trumas meiser and truma gedola. Ba'omer echon mechamishim shamru chachamim. That truma that's separated, that 1/50th mafresh ba'omer, he can do by estimation. Dimta inkan isr. If he makes a mistake in the amount, it's not usher. On a doraisa level, just one kernel of wheat would be good. The Torah doesn't even give an amount. We just say it should be 1/50th, and again, that's just the chachamim, and he can do it by estimation. So after trumas meiser, now trumas meiser, there is a set amount in the Torah. Meiser min meiser, it's 1/10 of the meiser. Nitelos ba'om, it's still, even though there's a set amount, we learn out from here it can be taken by estimation. Uve machshav, and also just by thought. And notice in Eina b'tzad zeh l'shem truma, he just looks at this part of it and says that's the truma. V'yochel b'tzad zeh, then he can eat from the other side. V'afal b'shalo hifresh, even though he didn't do any physical separation. V'tarvayo nafki mi v'nechshav, that's all learned from the pasuk of v'nechshav. V'haydi yolav trumas meiser from truma gedola, and omed hu yolav. We're learning trumas meiser from truma gedola in terms of this halacha that it can be by estimation. And the Gemara continues with the Mishnah, Hameniach Peros, if somebody sets aside produce, Lios Mavrish Alein Truma, Umaisros, he wants to use that produce, let's say he's going to eat other produce, that produce that he set aside is going to be the Truma and the Meiser. Or Mos, he sets aside money, Lios Mavrish Alein Meiser Sheni, you can put the Kedusha Meiser Sheni onto money, and that money is designated for that purpose. The point of the Mishnah is Mavrish Alein Bechezka Shein Kayomin. So at a time when he wants to eat some other fruit, and he wants to designate either that other produce that he set aside or that money, that should be the Truma, the Meiser, the money of Meiser Sheni, he can do that assuming that is still in existence, that it didn't get destroyed, it's not lost. And Imavdu, let's say it does get lost, Hareza Choshesh Me'es Leis, he has to be concerned for a 24-hour period, and that's going to be explained in the Gemara. Divrei Rebbe Elazar, that's the opinion of Rebbe Elazar, and the Mesoras Hashas says Rebbe Elazar ben Shamua. That is the opinion of Rebbe Elazar ben Shamua. And the Mishnah continues, Rebbe Yehuda Omer, Rebbe Yehuda says, B'shlosha prakim, there are 3 times, Bo'odkin es hayayin, that we inspect the wine to make sure it hasn't turned to vinegar, B'kidum shel motzai chag, by the blowing of the easterly wind at the end of Sukkot, Uvahotzas smadar, when the buds of the grapes emerge, Uvashas knisas mayim beboster, in the time when the water enters these buds from the grapes. And Rashi explains, Hameniach Peros Lios Mavrish Alein Somech Aleilo. In other words, he's relying on this produce that he set aside. V'yochel Tvalim Acherim, and he's eating other tevel, and he's going to say that the truma will take care of that tevel, that produce that he set aside somewhere else. That will be the truma and the meiser, etc. on this tevel. Sheyesh lo v'amar hamrei harei trumasan ba'osan Peros sheiktzesi lakach. That produce that I designated for this purpose, that's the truma on this produce over here. V'chein osa tamid. That's what he does in general. V'yim avdu halach levad konam mutzan shavdu. Now, let's say he goes and inspects and he finds that fruit that he designated a long time ago, it's gone. He now has to be concerned that tevel which he fixed with this produce that he set aside, that's now a problem. Let's say he didn't yet eat that tevel, he's got to do a new separation. Because maybe those peiros, they were already lost at the time that he put the truma onto those other peiros. He has to be concerned from a 24-hour period. Gemara Mefarsh. The Gemara will explain what exactly that means, that he has to be concerned for a 24-hour period. And then Rabbi Yehuda said these 3 times in the year we check the wine. Bodkenes ayayin sheinichu lios mafresh olav tzarich levodko shemehechmitz. You have to check to make sure that it didn't turn into vinegar, because the halacha is vein tormin min achometz al ayayin. You're not allowed to take truma from vinegar on wine, and so therefore, if you're going to say that this wine that was set aside is going to be truma on some other wine, you got to check 3 times a year and make sure that that wine did not turn to vinegar. And what are the 3 times? Bekidum shel matzoy achag, kishemin hasheves ruach kadem matzoy chag, when the eastern wind blows at the end of Sukkot. Hotzoas smadar ksom parach v'anovav nirn be'eshkol kesidron. Again, that's just the budding of the grapes. Uveshas knisas maim leboser, and when the water enters those grapes, kashein kapul halav, and that means the grapes are the size of like a white bean. Nikroin boser, that's called boser. That's when they're unripe grapes. So then the moisture enters into those grapes. So gedela besochu, and starts the grape starts to ripen. So when it starts to hold some of that water, that's the knisas hamayim. So again, at that point in time, so then also you have to check the wine and make sure it didn't turn to vinegar. There's another understanding of b'shas knisas mayim lishna achrin. Another way of understanding b'shas knisas mayim leboser hayu koshen ha'anavim kashen boser. At a certain point in time, when those grapes are boser, they begin to crush those grapes v'nosin l'sochan mayim, and they put water in there v'nasin chometz lativol. It turns into a kind of vinegar that is used for a dip. So again, at that point in time, that's when you check to see if the wine has turned to vinegar. And the point over here is that at these points in time, there is a change in the weather, and that change in the weather can turn wine into vinegar. And the Gemara says, "My me'es leis." What does the Mishnah mean when it says you have to be concerned if you find that this produce that you set aside is no longer there? You have to be concerned me'es leis for 24 hours. And the Gemara says, Rabbi Yochanan Amar Rabbi Yochanan says, me'es leis shel bedik. It means 24 hours back from the time that you checked. So if you found that it was lost, you have to assume that it might have been lost even within the last 24 hours. 24 hours ago, it may have been lost. And Rashi says, me'es leis shel bedika kashabodkon mitzan avud. And again, he checked, he found it was lost. Choshe shema me'esmol be'es hazos avdu. You have to be concerned, maybe yesterday at this exact time, 24 hours ago, maybe that's when it got lost. V'mason meiser toch me'es leiseh. The point is, if you designated this produce as meiser within that 24 hours, al peiros acherim, on other produce, tzarech la'afresh alei misafik. Then you have a real doubt over here. You're going to have to separate again out of the doubt. But more than that, we're not strict. If you did it more than 24 hours ago, we assume it was still present. If it's more than 24 hours ago, so then we can rely on the presumption that this produce was not lost. That's Rabbi Yochanan's opinion. Rabbi Elazar ben Antignos Omer Mishum Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Yanai. Rabbi Elazar ben Antignos says in the name of Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Yanai, and we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Lamed Aleph Amud Beis.